What's up, everybody? Zach Brunner here from Flurry Sports, and today we're going over my Dynasty Fantasy Football rookie rankings for running backs. Okay, so yesterday we went over the quarterback rankings for Dynasty rookie drafts. Today we're going to do running backs. I said yesterday, didn't love the quarterbacks in this year's draft class, but today the running backs were going to be good. And I can promise you that this is a stacked running back class. A lot of those top guys went to situations I didn't love, which definitely throws a loop into things. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about my 5 favorite running backs in the draft itself. Today is different. Today, we're talking about the Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings. So we're looking ahead. It's not just redraft. However, quarterbacks, I'm looking far ahead, right? I'm talking about that second contract a lot of times for value. Dynasty for quarterbacks and wide receivers, even tight ends to a point. We're talking about a ways down the road. When we're talking about running backs, though, it really is that first contract. Oftentimes, they're not really that valuable on their second contract unless it's a Christian McCaffrey, unless it's Saquon Barkley, obviously, right? So there is definitely more of a value placed on what they're going to do these next 4 years. It's not all this year, though. We're talking about Omarion Hampton in a little bit. Hampton couldn't have, he could have gone to much worse places, but he's not going to be the bell cow. So that definitely pushes him down a little bit. We'll talk about how far down, but let's just jump into the Dynasty Fantasy Football rookie rankings for running backs. And number one, not a surprise, most likely you're 101 in your Dynasty rookie drafts. And it would be interesting to see how high he goes in just regular Dynasty startup drafts as well. We're talking about Ashton Jeanty. Obviously drafted out of Boise. Some would say he should have been the Heisman winner. Drafted to the Raiders. Definitely an interesting situation. I said in that video a couple weeks ago, nervous about him going to the Raiders because I just don't want him to get wasted. I don't want him running behind an offensive line that is, has a ton of holes in it, right? I don't want to put the cart before the horse and let the horse get absolutely demolished here. With that being said, in terms of a philosophy point of view, I think Jeanty's in a pretty good situation. Pete Carroll comes to this team. Tom Brady's going to have an influence on how this team is run as well. But Pete Carroll in particular, we know what he's going to want from his offense. Even though he's going to have probably a bigger influence on the defensive side, we know what he wants from his offense. Seahawks in 2013, the season they won the Super Bowl against the Broncos, 52.7% of their plays were rushing plays. That led the NFL. Marshawn Lynch, as you can see, had over 300 carries. That's nearly 60% of his team's carries. And he was also third on the team in receptions. So to think that they're going to have a runner who just carries the ball a ton and isn't involved in the passing game, that's not true. And Pete Carroll's very willing to make someone a bell cow. And looking at the rest of the Raiders depth chart, which we'll do in a sec, definitely seems like Ashton Jeanty is going to be the bell cow. Obviously, drafted that high, we know he's going to be featured. Offensive line isn't the greatest, but I do think he is in a good situation. One of the big critiques of Jeanty from some critics coming out of the draft was, we know he can do running the football, right? One of the greatest running back seasons of all time. But can he pass protect? Can he catch the ball? Can he run routes? Well, to that, I say yes. As you can see here, he had 23 receptions last year. Not the greatest. 2 years ago, let's not forget, 43 receptions. He can catch the football. Almost 600 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns in 2023 for Boise. Obviously playing against easier opponents there, but 43 receptions, that's nothing to scoff at. In fact, Scatabo, this is absolutely no shade to him. People talking about, he's a dual threat. The work he can do as a receiver, it's pretty incredible. He had 45 receptions, 600 yards. So pretty much identical numbers there. It's just, by the way, in that same year, Jeanty essentially put up the exact year that Scatabo just put up. And then this past year, by the way, he ran for 2,600 yards. So Jeanty is an absolute monster, low center of gravity. He's hard to tackle, built really strongly there, and he has breakaway speed. So he's going to be an absolute force, right? We know as an individual, he's an absolute force. We just don't want him to end up like Saquon Barkley with the Giants. We want him to have blocking, want him to have a good offensive situation. And While I do think this year could be a little bit disappointing, not 100% what he's going to do, we know Pete Carroll's going to put a team around him. We know he knows that to win, you got to win in the trenches. You got to assert your authority. You need to run the football. You need to set up the pass with the run, especially if you have Geno Smith at quarterback. And if the offensive line is bad, running the football effectively is only going to help the offensive line. It's going to slow down those pass rushers. And I think that is what they will try to do this year. The absolute biggest change that you will see from the Raiders from last year to this year is running the football. I can promise you that. Last year, the Raiders dead last in yards per attempt and third from last in rushing plays versus passing plays. The Raiders ran the ball less than 36% of the time last year. Only teams worse were the Bengals and the Browns. That's not a winning strategy. Even though I don't think the Raiders are necessarily a playoff team this year, I can see them pushing 42, 44% rushing plays, even higher potentially, but just doing that alone is going to keep them in games and is going to help this offense out greatly. Look for them to run a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, even though they're shopping Mayer right now. I don't think that will even get them away from 12 personnel, even if they are successful in trading him. Look for a lot of 12, look for a lot of running the ball, look for a lot of Ashton Jeanty this year. Looking at the depth chart, there's nothing behind him. I am not afraid whatsoever. Ashton Jeanty is going to be the bell cow here, and he's going to be a top 10 running back in redraft this year, pretty confidently. Even if the year isn't as successful as you want, having 300 plus carries, most likely, I love it. I absolutely love it for Jeanty. No doubt he's the number 1 running back in Dynasty Fantasy Football rookie rankings. But now it gets a little weird, right? Now we got to talk about who is number 2. And even despite splitting however many ways in that Chargers backfield, number 2 is going to be Omarion Hampton for me, running back out of North Carolina. Again, this is Dynasty, so we are looking ahead. This year, I don't love him. I do not love him. I think maybe towards the end of the year, maybe the midpoint of the year, he may take hold of this backfield just because he's better. But right now, he will split with Najee Harris without a doubt to start. Why wouldn't he? I'm not convinced that the Chargers are done adding to their backfield. They could bring in another player to run the ball a little bit. Even if Najee's ineffective, that other player will carry the ball a little bit. Will it be a Gus Edwards or J.K. Dobbins coming back? I don't know. But I think somebody else could end up taking carries in this backfield, and that's why Omarion Hampton, while I love him as a player, absolute beast, all-around player. He's not just a power runner. He can catch the ball. He can do everything. But for this year, damper expectations, more of an RB2 than an RB1 for sure. Probably more of a flex than an RB2 even. But overall, you're talking about year 2, year 3, year 4. The offensive philosophy is there. The offense around him is there. The opportunity for touchdowns is there. And the opportunity to play from ahead is there. I love the situation for Omarion Hampton. I love the philosophy from his head coach and offensive coordinator. And I love him as a player. So, despite the backfield split being what it is, Omarion Hampton is my running back too. Let's look at him a little bit further in the situation, a little bit further though. Just looking at his college stats in North Carolina, Omarion Hampton was so good. Had him on my fantasy team, so I can definitely tell you he was great. 1,600 yards this past year on the ground, 38 receptions, 373 yards, 17 total touchdowns. I mean, he was a very, very good player. He looks like just a power runner. If you just see short clips, he definitely seems like a power runner, but he can move. He can make some people miss, but he will definitely run you over. But he's a versatile guy. He's going to be an absolute weapon in this Chargers offense. And I mean, they drafted him high for a reason. He will be featured sooner rather than later. But I mean, looking at this depth chart, offensive line, I love that, right? This offensive line, not are they great in pass protection on the outside, but in that interior 3, they want to maul people. They want to absolutely control the line of scrimmage and, I mean, just beat the crap out of you. So this is a team that definitely wants to run the football. They didn't really necessarily go crazy at tight end, which I kind of love as well. Tyler Conklin's a veteran. He can catch the ball a little bit. Gadsden coming from Syracuse. He's a great receiver, so I think he can do a little bit. But Will Dissly, that defensive lineman, I believe, converted to tight end. He started with Seattle playing in Chargers last year. He is a blocker. He can maul you. He can do some receiving the ball as well. But this is a team that wants to run the football quite a bit. And looking at that backfield, obviously with Najee Harris there, they went and got him this offseason. Again, I think they still could go get somebody else. They drafted Raheem Sanders as well. Will he end up getting involved whatsoever? I'm unsure. But I think there's for sure a split between Harris and Hampton, at least to start, and definitely potential for a number 3 running back to do something as well. Don't love that, but what I do love is the Chargers want to run the football. They ran the ball almost 45% of the time last year. That's the 10th most in the league. That doesn't scream super optimism, but the reason they didn't run it more is because they just weren't very good at it. I mean, they were the 10th most rushing team last year, right? They were tied for 27th. They were 27th, basically tied for 25th. 4 yards per carry. Not good at all. Only teams worse: the Raiders, who we just talked about, the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Rams, the Dolphins. 27th, not good. If they get up to even average, they get up to the 16th, the 15th, the 14th, that 10% or that 10th ranking in terms of how much they run the football, they want to be in that top 5. They want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to set up the deep ball with Justin Herbert. And Omarion Hampton could be the key to unlocking that and unlocking this offense's potential overall. So Omarion Hampton, my number 2 running back for Dynasty Fantasy Football Rookie Rankings for this season. He's not my number 2. That is redraft. We'll talk about redraft down the road. But if you are drafting your rookie running backs right now, in terms of where I would draft him in my rookie draft here, he is probably not 102. I like him quite a bit. He's probably a 103, 104, maybe 105. Depending on your team needs, I don't think you necessarily need to go crazy. I'm not sure if I would trade up for him whatsoever, to be honest. Even though I love him as a player, if I'm like 108, 109, do I think I need to trade up to 103 for Omarion Hampton? I don't think I do. And that just screams to the depth in this draft. Speaking of depth, let's talk about number 3, and that is Quinshon Judkins, staying in the state of Ohio, obviously national champion with the Buckeyes. Now he is the running back 1 at the moment for the Cleveland Browns. How long will he be the running back 1? I honestly don't know. Nick Chubb is still out there. The Browns need a PR win, and one very, very easy win for them would be to sign Nick Chubb back to their team. They haven't done it yet, but we shall see what happens there. But Judkins is not a stranger to a backfield split at Ohio State. Obviously, he's split with TreVeyon Henderson, who we'll talk about in a second. Judkins, though, was the lead back. He was the more productive back, maybe not the more efficient, but he's the one who had led the team in rushing touchdowns. And I think he could be that for this Browns team this year as well. The Browns, thing of the past of the Browns being a run-dominant team. We think about how Nick Chubb was a 5-yard per carry guy. Nick Chubb would just pound the rock behind this big offensive line, right? They had such good offensive linemen. It was just 3, 4, 5 yards per carry every single time, and it just set up the quarterback perfectly. You may be surprised to know that the Browns ran the ball less than anybody last year on a percentage basis. They were behind the Bengals. Less than 35% of the time the Browns ran the football. I am pretty confident in saying that will not happen again this year. I think they need to run the football. However, how much can they run the football? If they're going to be trailing in games, that's definitely not the greatest thing. But Judkins is a very good running back. He is in a situation where they want to use him. They will use him. The question is just the offense around him. Who's quarterback? How efficient are they going to be? How often are they going to be in scoring position? All of those are very, very, very valid questions, and I think it's going to change year by year. But the Browns have shown the ability and the willingness to really have a bell cow running back, give him the tools to succeed, and ride him until, he tears a knee a few times, right? But looking at Judkins as a player, because I feel like he is the one getting slept on here. Even TreVeyon Henderson, his counterpart, I feel like is getting a lot more hype, and he's the flashier running back. I get it. But Judkins is a damn good player, and I feel like we're disrespecting him. Looking at the Ohio State stats here, again, we'll talk about TreVeyon Henderson next, spoiler alert, but Quinshon Judkins led the Buckeyes in rushing attempts, almost 200 last year, led them in rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, led the team, still had 22 receptions, over 5 yards per carry. He absolutely balled out. Henderson, again, 7 yards per attempt, a flashier player, the home run threat. I get that. I get why there's hype around him. But in terms of a bell cow running back, there's absolutely no doubt that Judkins fits that bill better than Henderson. And that is why Judkins is my number 3. And he landed in a situation where he's, at the moment, has the keys to the car here. Now, how did he do when the games mattered most? Looking at the bottom here, obviously 4 college football playoff games. That's a lot. It feels like even more than what we got. He had 6 touchdowns in 4 games. Pretty darn good. That cold Tennessee game really didn't have to do much, right? Against Oregon, 5 yards per carry, 85 yards. Texas didn't run the ball very much, still fell in the end zone twice. And he had 3 receptions. Love that. And then the national championship, over 9 yards per carry, 100 yards, 2 receptions, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 1 through the air. The dude shows up when the lights are on. I absolutely love that. He's a guy who can get counted on. He's someone who gets better as the game goes on. And everything about Quinshon Judkins, I am about. I can tell you that. Looking at the Browns last year again, this is one of the most sad Brown stat lines I have seen. 104 carries for Jerome Ford, 102 carries for Nick Chubb. Neither looked good last year. Chubb obviously getting hurt. Definitely, I mean, it blew. It was not good. And Ford's not that great of a player anyway. So this is someone who can come in, talking about Judkins, who I think can get an absolute minimum 200 carries. And that, I mean, that's the combination of Ford and Chubb, right? So you're saying Judkins comes in, gets 220 carries, 900 yards. Not the worst season whatsoever for a rookie season. I think Ford will still mix in maybe a little bit. There's going to be somebody else who mixes in for the Browns. I don't think Judkins is going to be a 65% carry guy necessarily, but I do think he is going to be a big part in the Browns establishing the run again, establishing that culture, which is desperately needed. And I think those who own Quinshon Judkins are going to be rewarded for that. And I think the Browns are going to be very willing to lock him down in the same way that they did with Nick Chubb for so long. Hopefully Judkins just stays healthier during that time as well. Okay, we might as well stay with Ohio State here. Let's talk about running back number 4 in my Dynasty Fantasy Football rookie rankings. That's TreVeyon Henderson, who ended up getting drafted by the New England Patriots. Talking about situations I didn't necessarily want. I did not want TreVeyon Henderson going to the Patriots. I did not project TreVeyon Henderson going to the Patriots, but after just evaluating it, looking at things a little bit more, watching more film, I think it makes sense. Patriots, I think, do want a bell cow running back at some point. I don't think that's what this is. I think this is more of the old school. I say old school, I'm talking about maybe 6-7 years ago. I think the Patriots are going to mix and match their running backs a decent amount. So Ramondre Stevenson owners, I don't think you need a panic sell. I think Ramondre Stevenson can very much be the hammer, and then TreVeyon Henderson is going to be playing a very similar role to college. I think it's going to be the Judkins Henderson role once again. Henderson's the change of pace. Henderson is the home run threat. I think there's going to be a situation where there's going to be all the casuals saying, how isn't Henderson getting all of the touches and Ramondre Stevenson is still the running back 1? That makes no sense. Henderson averages 2 yards per carry more than him. What are the Patriots doing? We're going to get all the casuals complaining bullshit like that. And Henderson's going to be great, right? It's going to be the same thing that we saw in Pittsburgh the last few years with Najee Harris there. Harris wasn't very, productive. And then Jaylen Warren came in and was great, right? Like, oh, why isn't Warren getting more carries? Well, Mr. Casual, maybe you don't know anything about football, and maybe the change of pace guy won't necessarily thrive as a bell cow. And that's going to be the situation with Henderson, who I think is an absolutely great player. He is great. I think he's going to be good for fantasy. However, he's not a bell cow. You shouldn't expect him to get 300 carries, but you should expect him to push for 1,000 yards at some point. Will it be this year? I don't know. I could see the Patriots easing him in, being a little bit skeptical of the rookie. You have to earn your stripes. That feels like the Patriots way. That feels like the Vrabel way. And that feels like the McDaniels way. So I do think that is going to happen. I think he's very clearly the running back 4 for me, just because I think that ceiling is capped based on role. And I don't think he necessarily starts off extremely hot for the Patriots this year. But, I mean, with that being said, Henderson's a buy low candidate if Stevenson is the one getting all the carries to start the year, which is very possible. Henderson could be 3rd in the pecking order to start the year. I would not panic whatsoever. I think Henderson is going to emerge at some point. He will make a play at some point, and then he is going to be that 12 carry guy per game. He's going to come in, he's going to catch the ball. They're going to try to get him in space, and then once he breaks a tackle, see ya. Let's talk about number 5, shall we? And there's so many good running backs here, so I say number 5, you're going to be upset. Number 5 on my rankings is RJ Harvey out of UCF, going to the Denver Broncos in that Sean Payton offense. Sean Payton and the Broncos desperately want a running back to use. Last year, they couldn't do anything from the running back position because they were so bad. Now, behind a pretty good offensive line, with some weapons, some money to spend, Bo Nix did what he did last year, and now they have a running back that I think they can rely on in RJ Harvey, who's battle-tested, and he's ready to go. He is an NFL-ready player, and I think he's going to hit the ground running. No pun intended. Now, I'm an RJ Harvey guy, so keep that in mind. But also keep in mind that I know what I'm talking about, so that's a big reason why as well. RJ Harvey, I'll say the knock against him first in terms of what I think, right? He's 5'8", maybe 200 pounds soaking wet. He's a smaller guy, so the chances of him being a bell cow, pretty darn slim. The chances of anybody being a bell cow in today's NFL is also very slim, so that knock only goes so far. But yes, he's 5'8". He's not built to take a ton of NFL hits, right? In college is a very different game than the NFL. Playing in the American Conference, or I guess UCF turned to Big 12 now. Very different than the AFC West, right? Still, I think he can carry the ball quite a bit for the Broncos. I think he's probably the RB2 this year. I think he has a very strong chance to be the RB2 in fantasy this year. I think he's here for the long haul. I think he's a Sean Payton guy. He's going to be used all the time. Like, he didn't catch the ball very often in college. I think he can do that more. He's not going to be probably a great player in pass protection. I think there's going to be others used in that regard, but he's hard to bring down. He's slippery, and I think he's going to pick up a lot of big gains for the Broncos. I think he's going to be a very good running back. And you saw in college how productive he can be. Looking at the depth chart for the Broncos, because I think that's probably the biggest question, right? Now, Javonte Williams got his bum ass out of town. Sean Payton could not be happier, so he's gone. Bye. I think RJ Harvey is the running back 1 right away. Audric Estime, I think, is going to be involved, though. I think he's the short yardage guy for a lot of the things. I think he'll probably develop into a pretty good pass protection running back. Like, he's a bigger guy, obviously. So I think both of them, I apologize for this comparison because it's not completely true, right? But think of them as the Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. Now, once again, before anybody clips it, before anybody goes crazy, RJ Harvey is not Alvin Kamara. He is not going to be the receiving back Alvin Kamara is. With that being said, I think RJ Harvey right now is a much better runner than Alvin Kamara and a much better in short yardage. So take that for whatever you want to. But I think Audric Estime and Harvey are a good thunder and lightning combo. Jaleel McLaughlin, I think he answered the call every time Sean Payton asked him to really do anything last year. He's not a great player, but he's a good role player, right? I think he'll come in and do a little bit. You know, maybe he's the Samaje Perine that the Chiefs used the past couple of years or last year. McLaughlin's going to have a little bit of pass catching duties, a little bit of pass protection duties, but I think it's the RG Harvey and Estime show, and I think Harvey is the guy. I think Harvey is going to be the one seeing and reaping most of the benefits here this year, and that's why he's my running back 5. I think you can get him depending on your draft. There's people who think the same way as I do, and people will draft him far before his ADP, which I think is correct. However, there's going to be people who wait. There's going to be people who see him low on that sleeper fantasy ADP. I think he's pretty low. So you could get this guy for a bargain. And like I said, I think there's a very, very, very real chance he's the running back 2 in fantasy this year. So if you are a contender, if your team's a contender and you're just looking for that running back 2, I think Harvey can be that guy. So I think absolutely pull the trigger there. Now, the question is, RJ Harvey or Kaleb Johnson? So let me talk about Kaleb Johnson really quick. Obviously, I think his situation might be more clear, but if I'm grading the players, Kaleb Johnson makes me a little bit afraid. Let's start with the obvious, and we're all thinking it, right? He spells Caleb with a K. I don't really trust that. That feels weird. We don't need to dive too deep into it. I don't know how many other successful Kalebs spell their name with a K. I mean, to be honest, I don't like the name Kaleb anyway. Caleb Williams, other Kalebs like that. It seems like a pretty soft name. So I don't love that. And I'm not calling Kaleb Johnson soft. I'm saying there's a chance. He was on my college fantasy team last year. I know he's a dog. I know he played well at Iowa, but don't love the name Kaleb. Like it less spelled with a K. Just feels odd. I digress. He comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers in a pretty good situation, right? Najee Harris just carried the ball for 263 yards last year, and he is out of town. And he's out of town because he was not very efficient with the carries. He carried the ball, like I said, 260 times. Jaylen Warren in 2 fewer games carried the ball 120. I don't think Jaylen Warren's role is going to get smaller, so I think it definitely could get a little bit bigger. They also signed Kenneth Gainwell. I think he's going to be used a little bit. But I think Kaleb Johnson is going to be given every single opportunity to be the majority ball carrier in this offense, right? I think he's going to see 55% of the carries more often than not. With that being said, I worry about Kaleb Johnson having a little bit of Najee Harris syndrome, to be completely honest. Like, he's not a guy who's going to make people miss, and he's not that fast. So Kaleb Johnson, I'm worried about him being a pretty inefficient player at the NFL level, much like Najee Harris. So if he's going to continue to get hit at the line of scrimmage, 1 yard in the backfield, I think the Steelers' offensive line's getting better. I know they're getting better, so that will happen less. But I don't think he's going to be a threat to catch the ball much, and I don't think he's a threat to break off a big run, and I don't think he's a threat to make people miss. So with all of that being said, if Kaleb Johnson's just going to be absorbing hits for his first few years in the NFL, that's what he is, I don't love that. I don't love that from an efficiency standpoint, and it makes me afraid of him for the future, to be completely honest. So with all of that being said, that's why he's my running back 6, even though I think a lot of people would probably put him at number 5. I think a lot of people assume he has a bigger role than RJ Harvey this year. And he might have a bigger role in terms of just a number standpoint, in terms of touches or snaps. But even that, I think, is pretty comparable. So if you're saying one guy is really fast, good at avoiding contact, and plays on what could potentially be a better offense, I don't know. I think those are comparable as well. He's just a more electric player who can make plays versus a guy who, played at Iowa, and he's not a tight end. So, and he spells his name with a K as the name Kaleb. Don't like it. Don't trust it. Regardless, just an efficiency standpoint, I don't love it. So Kaleb Johnson, he's still my running back 6. He is still, if I draft him, I'd like him to be my flex. He could become an RB2 pretty quickly, right? But I think he kind of is what he is. I don't think there's much growing in terms of how he plays football versus RJ Harvey continues to get better. And that's what you're going with. Now, there's other good rookie running backs, right? I talked about how good this running back class is, and it's also very, very deep. It's very deep. It's such a good class here. So Cam Scatterbo went to the Giants. I think he has a role right away. I think he's the short yardage guy. He's going to catch the ball a bunch as well. I think he's going to be in a pretty much a 50-50 split. So I like Scatterbo a decent amount. He's my running back 7. Once again, you can get my full Dynasty rookie rankings in the description below. They're also over on Flurry Sports. Go check them out. But other names I think you need to keep an eye on. Dylan Sampson also went to Cleveland, so he is backing up Quinshon Judkins. Is there a situation where Sampson earns carries? I think absolutely. He's an absolutely talented player. I can't believe that the Browns doubled up and took him. That makes me a little sad. But I think Sampson has the potential to be a fantasy sleeper as well. Devin Neal went to the Saints. At some point, Alvin Kamara is going to be done, and I think he can spell and maybe complement Alvin Kamara a little bit. He'll throw his head around. I like Devin Neal there. I think it's a little surprising how much he slipped, right? And it's mostly because of the depth in this draft, but I like him. Jaden Blue went to the Cowboys. I don't love Jaden Blue. I don't love him as a player. I think he's okay. But this Cowboys backfield blows. So would it be surprising if Jaden Blue carries the ball more than any other player in the Dallas backfield this year? Wouldn't surprise me one little bit. and you can get him late in Dynasty rookie drafts, so I think he is a very good sleeper there. Keep an eye on Woody Marks, right? You know, in Houston, you got Joe Mixon there. Joe Mixon's at the end of his career. Keep an eye on him. Taj Brooks, keep an eye on him. He doesn't have much ahead of him in terms of talent, in my personal opinion, in Cincinnati. So keep an eye on him. Ollie Gordon, I don't know. He's in Miami. That doesn't excite me. Trevor Etienne in Carolina, with how crowded that backfield is, that does not excite me. Okay, and one other one, definitely a deep sleeper. He probably is going to go undrafted in your rookie drafts. I've been taking him, so maybe he won't. But he's definitely going to go very late. I'm going to butcher the last name, most likely. So if I get it correct, definitely compliment me in the comments below. If I get it wrong, please correct me. That is completely fine. Kyle Monagai, he's from Rutgers. He got drafted by the Bears. The Bears were a team I think were very excited to take a running back. We saw what Ben Johnson did with Detroit. I think they were very much in the Ashton Jeanty race. They didn't get him, obviously, and then they just didn't draft a running back for a while. Monagai is not that exciting, but I think he could be a pretty good complement to the backfield there. And now this is a regime in Chicago who has no allegiance really to Quinshon Judkins. So I think someone is going to be a complimentary back to Swift there, most likely. I think that's the way they go. I think they go Swift and somebody else. Could it be Quinshon Judkins and somebody else? I think that's potentially. It could have just be Swift and Johnson. That's also potentially correct. But I'm just saying they like Monagai, if that is how you pronounce his name. And I think you just need to keep an eye on him. If you have an empty bench spot, if you have a receiver or somebody that you know what they are, who cares? You're not going to play them. Pick up this guy right now. And worst case scenario, you drop him during training camp or after training camp. But this is a guy who's very interesting to me, and he has the potential to just spike up ADP. So go check him out. But that is it for my Dynasty Fantasy Football rookie rankings for running backs today. Again, in the description, there's a link to Flurry Sports, to the full rankings. Go check those out as well. And Thursday, we will be back with the wide receiver rankings, the top 5. Maybe we'll talk about a couple more. Comment below other Dynasty Fantasy Football stuff you want to see. We have other stuff in the works, but if you have something you specifically want to see us cover, please let us know. Let me know. And if you have any fantasy questions as well, drop them in the comments. Not only will I be answering, other people from Flurry Sports will answer, and other viewers will answer. So definitely ask any questions you have, and I will see you soon on Thursday with the wide receivers. Bye. Fuck yeah.